I have a real love for podcast media. I don't mean love flippantly in the sense of preferences. I, like most people, can get sucked into a rabbit hole of YouTube shorts and burn up a ton of time mindlessly flicking my thumb. But I don't love YouTube shorts. They love me, I guess. There's something about an engaging conversation between two people who are genuinely interested in each other that I think is deeply captivating. Time passes by quickly, massive amounts of energy is consumed, yet the energy seems to multiply in a way that you leave with more than you went in with. I love what can be learned about a person by sitting with them without restrictions or rules or guardrails, where both people are allowed to be wrong and work through complicated topics together in good faith. I love podcasts in the way that some people love reading. Imagine what you can learn about a person by reading what they took the time to put on paper, or in hearing the way that they think out loud. My guest today is Matt Alvarez, and in one sense, Matt and I are nothing alike. Where I've been an avid consumer of podcast media since 2014, Matt had never even listened to a full podcast leading up to the fall of 2020. In September of that year, the world changed completely for Matt, and for many people associated with podcasting. And in 2.5 weeks, he suddenly became the man that everyone who wanted a podcast studio would look to as the subject matter expert. You'll hear a little bit about that project in this conversation, though I thought we did a good job of avoiding that topic altogether. In many other ways, Matt and I are cut from the same cloth, and that's where this conversation was primarily focused. It's odd to some to say that you're proud of someone who you're in the same position in life with, but I'm truly proud of Matt and how he's developing as a man, as a father, as a CEO, as a friend. Whatever this podcast becomes will be due in large part to Matt and the team that he's assembled and their involvement from the very first episode. I hope you'll enjoy this visit. This is Matt Alvarez. And then anything more aggressive than that, ayahuasca, ibogaine, I don't, not at this phase of my life.
And maybe correct me if I'm wrong. I think the thing about what I've seen with a lot of friends who have gone through that journey is like they have this seeking, right? Like they're spending so much time maybe disconnected from God, or they're spending more time like maybe they've gone through a divorce, or they're just kind of trying to reinvent their identity. And like I always see that it's always the same thing. It's like I'm lost. I think entrepreneurship pushes you to the edge. But it kind of keeps you grounded too, because like your purpose is like your kids, your wife, like what you're trying to build.
Yeah.
A lot of the people I've seen are like kind of like our age, but they're wandering still. And I always say, it's like, I always say it this way. It's like, it's kind of paid suffering to some degree because people want to connect with something and maybe they didn't have the same type of, let's say, trials and tribulations other people have had. So they're trying to seek identity through something that's maybe really deeply, deeply rooted.
Yeah.
So instead of just saying, look, like I'm probably at a good baseline right now, I'm just really sad, maybe depressed, I don't have the career I want, whatever. It's like, well, they kind of want to go deeper to feel like, it's like a trending thing now. It's like everybody's like, yeah, let's go do this trip because it reveals everything about you that you can't see, and it ties in all these neural pathways when really it's just like, I don't know, man, maybe just make a decision and stick with it.
Yeah,
I
would say, obviously you have a lot of people that go through those sort of journeys and everybody's experience with it and reasons for it is going to be different. Right. And I only know like a handful of people that have done something like ayahuasca more than one time. And they're all kind of from different walks of life. Some of them are entrepreneurs that have families, and their reasoning passes muster with me. It just doesn't feel to apply to me for where I'm at with it. I find that even though sobriety is probably the most challenging path for me, because it requires me to not be able to push easy buttons, to be able to, like we were talking about, being able to unpack from a stressful week. Cannabis would have been an easy button to push to not have to develop my own skill set for doing that without it. So my style of interviewing is not interviewing. I'm much more of a sit down, have a conversation, write down some touch points of things that I know I'd want to talk to you about, even if we were just having coffee. Talking about how we met is something I gave a lot of thought to, because I know that when you've been interviewed in the past, that's like the topic of conversation everybody wants to cover.
Yep.
And that's an area that in our previous discussions, we're both pretty private about. But can you talk about what got you into, I want to hear you talk about what got you into the business that you're in and what that first project was like. We don't have to talk about it specifically, but you went from hey, I'm kind of doing this as a personal project for music studio design. This is my understanding of it. Tell me if this is wrong. To all of a sudden, hey, we need you to design and execute the project, the podcast studio as sort of your first endeavor. So that's something I want to hear you talk about. I do want to hear you talk about your trip to Dubai, because we haven't talked about that since you've been back. And then another piece of this too, yeah, I told you I brought you something. You have put us in front of some customers that have turned into really good customers and some people that I would actually consider friends now. And I appreciate that immensely, man. You know, you will be familiar with this from your business, but when somebody recommends you into a company and says, hey, don't make a second phone call, just talk to this guy in this company, that's the one to go with.
Yeah.
It makes everything from the moment I walk through the door and my team walks through the door smooth sailing, because we already have that trust built.
Right.
So I don't take that kind of stuff lightly. So I did get you something. Our mutual friend Josephine helped pick this.
No way.
Yeah, dude.
Of course it's Josephine.
She was behind it.
Oh, Tacovas.
Yeah.
Nice,
so
man.
I know my figuring was you're probably not a cowboy boot guy.
Well, we'll see if that's going to change.
But they have a different offering that when I saw it kind of grabbed me, and I thought, okay, let's flip that over. It's upside down. So Tacovas has been a client of ours since they were sub 30 people. And that is mock toe work boot with a composite toe on it too, so it's safety rated.
This is going to protect me in Dubai next time we go. Yeah. When the bombs drop, this is what you wear, right?
When the bombs drop.
I appreciate it. Thank you, dude.
So you told me you were an 11 when I asked you at that studio project.
Dude, you're sneaky.
Yeah, I try.
Yeah.
That's a 10.5, and the lady at the Tacova store told me they run big, so get us a half size down.
I love it, man. This is amazing, dude. I've never owned like a pair of boots. Yeah. Like my work boots are a company, I forgot the company, but they're sneakers with steel toes.
Yeah.
And sometimes it just doesn't look good on a work site. So like this will legitimize me, because you know what I mean, I'm the sweatpants t-shirt guy.
Yeah, dude.
So now I can actually wear jeans and some boots. I love it, man.
Those are cool because you can dress them up a little bit with lighter sole. And they're every pair of Tacovas that I own are like some of my favorite shoes.
They're slick, man. These are sick, dude. Look, I mean, that sole. Like you don't know how many times I've stepped on a nail on a work site. And it's just like that close to go into my foot. And I look at it, I was like, well, this sucks. But yeah, that's slick, dude. Thank you so much.
You bet, man. Thank you for that referral.
Absolutely.
That was a fun one to work with.
Many more to come. Very cool.
Talk to me about the business background. So we met on that one specific project, but how did you get into it to begin with?
Man, it's all happenstance, you know, God, universe, whatever you want to call it. Like,
I'll call it God.
Yeah, we'll call it God, you know. And I'm really happy to say that, because I've been going through my own journey, getting closer to him. And now looking back on it, you know, I can actually appreciate the steps that it took to get to that place. Because in hindsight, I look at it as just kind of randomness. You know, there wasn't really any karmic or cosmic reason. Mm-hmm. But, you know, I spent so much time, you know, playing a different role in something that, you know, my identity was, you know, a musician for a long time. And I think everything just kind of started tying into that. So, you know, started playing music at 15 and did the whole musician thing. And, you know, I was like, hey, man, how do you get girls? I'll pick up a guitar. Cool. You know, it worked out. But, you know, I didn't pursue a career necessarily. I didn't go to school. I didn't go to college. I know my mom wanted me to. And I just kind of said, hey, you know, I just want to keep playing in my band and, you know, just, you know, struggle a bit, work, whatever it is. So I worked in healthcare for probably about 9 years, 8 years, something like that.
Right out of high school?
Kind of, yeah. So, you know, I did all the, you know, Walmart, Home Depot, all the fun, you know, little first jobs you get. But then I had an ex that I was seeing, and her brother got me into healthcare. So I did that for quite a bit. And through that, you know, kind of enabled me to play music and whatnot. And then I moved into IT when I was with a private practice. And, you know, started learning everything about networking, security, you know, just everything, you know, client machine related. So it's like, it's really nice because I saw it as a really cool skill set that I had. And, you know, IT is this weird amorphous thing. People don't really know what it is.
I'm aware.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, of anybody I know, like you would know. And it's this thing that makes everything run. and it's so nuanced, but nobody wants to talk about it, you know? So it was really cool to have that skill set behind it. And then shortly after I got married, I lost that job, and that's where it kind of hit me. I was like, man, I gotta figure out what I'm gonna do next. You know, no college degree, and I just didn't really have any idea. So I just kind of did the same thing. Started using my own, you call it gift of gab or whatever, to try and find different opportunities. And being a musician, having a little bit of IT, eventually I started working into like home automation.
Mm.
And around that time as well, actually, previous to that, I had built a recording studio. So I had my own studio. It was nothing, crazy. It was in a storage unit, I just kind of figured it out. I had friends. I told them, I was like, I don't want to play in bands anymore. It's too much. I'm burnt out. I'm tired of touring. So I rented a couple storage units, and we literally just built these like studios inside and figured it out. And next thing I knew, I had clients. I'm kind of bullshitting my way through it, but it's like cool. Like I'm learning, I'm getting paid to learn it. And then doing the home automation stuff, I was learning more about how to set up systems, wiring things, like trades work.
Mhm.
And it kind of humbles you too, because you're like out on houses that are construction sites. It's hot, like it was the first job I did where I was doing, I say, changing oil and doing tires is pretty labor intensive, but this is the first job where you're out in the heat and you're just eating it, man. Like these are chain smoking dudes, like, just be a man, get on that ladder, stop bitching about stuff. So, it was weird going from such a, environment where people encourage the HR lady to do her job to just a bunch of guys just shitting on you constantly. Yeah. So, you have to get a little bit tough.
At that phase, was it professional ambition, or was it more of just like an art project you were doing because you were interested in it?
So this is what happened. I had this kind of actualization when I was working that particular job. And I remember sitting down with my ex-wife and I was telling her, I was like, it was a hard day. I remember I was like in an attic pulling some cable, and it was like 120 degrees up there. It gets hot, And these guys were just ragging on me because I didn't know I didn't like heights. It's like now we're on 20, 30-foot ladders, and I'm freaking out. And there's no like vulnerability in the trades. You know what I mean?
Yeah, dude.
You can't just be a guy who's like, oh, I've got a feeling.
Yeah, you can't be sensitive.
You can't be sensitive. Like you just got to go for it, and they'll call you on it. It's like a bunch of like dogs, and they can smell your fear. So you just do it. And she was trying to encourage me to be like, well, if you don't like it, let's find something else. Yada. She, always supportive that way. But I just remember thinking to myself, like, no. Like, I can't run from this. Like I was looking at the positives. I'm like, look, I'm losing weight. I'm feeling more fit. Like I'm learning all these new skills, and like I can get past like the bullying, whatever, no big deal. So I stuck around with it, and it was great. Like I started kind of climbing a little bit of the ranks, but I wasn't there too long. And then they did layoffs, and it was like, oh, here we go again. So started working in education, and then I started doing more like IT, AV stuff, support. But that's where things kind of turned around. So like I was taking more initiative. Maybe it was like entrepreneurial spirit, but like I was like, look, there are issues here in the school district, lots of red tape. Why don't I try to fix some of this stuff? The poor teachers have a bunch of stage systems that are all antiquated. All this stuff's from the 80s. Most of it's donated. What if I just pitch something to like the CTO and see what he thinks about this? And so he said, hey, look, find me a solution. If it's a decent budget, we'll give you the money to do it. I was like, that was pretty easy, right? Like I learned really quickly, it's not always red tape. It's just lack of initiative and lack of follow through. So I was like, all right, cool, I'm going to do that. Called up a company who had been trying to, they tried to wine and dine us to get into the districts and whatnot out of Louisville. And called them up. I said, hey, do you guys want your first project? I'm working on this thing. Can you guys hit this budget? And to them, it was a way into the district. So they did it, and everything was great. And then they poached me, and they're like, hey, look, like you've got some talent, your stuff. We're trying to build a sector in Austin. Would you want to lead that as our technical sales engineer? Throw out a number. At the time, I was making like 38 grand. It's just like, to me, it was like, what's a number? I've never been asked to kind of formulate that offer in my head.
Name your price.
Name your price.
Yeah.
And so my value was so under what I actually thought it was, or to me, I had valued myself so lowly. So I was just like, okay, well, threw a number out, and they didn't even bat an eye. So they're like, cool. So now I'm learning sales and kind of on an island by myself. And so all of this is to say, it's like,
How old were you when that was going on? Sorry to interrupt you.
That's
want to place
probably
that in history.
27, 28.
Okay.
So about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And so I did that for a little bit. I was kind of on my own little island by myself. That was the weirdest part of it. Is I'd go up to Louisville, which is, a little north of Dallas, and always go to these sales meetings and then come back down. It's like, I'd never done sales and I had never been rejected so much other than when I was younger with women. You know what I mean? Like, it was just like, okay, you're spending a lot of time trying to figure out people. And that was the one thing that I realized was, connecting with people is hard when you're not authentic. That was my first lesson in sales was I was trying to play a role of a sales guy that you had seen on TV or, you go buy a car. And I stepped back, and I remember the first time I met this guy named Todd Greathouse. And he was a CTO at, I think, Geronimo, Navarro ISDs, kind of near here. And we became, no, actually, you know what? He was here in Bastrop County. Yeah, I met him over at the high school right down the street. And very different age gap. He was like probably 20 years older than me. And somehow we just started connecting over music. And that's when I realized, I was like, oh, that's my in to talk to this guy a little bit. And we're just talking and talking. And to me, like, I love connecting in ways that are just very, what's the word? Like, personal to me, I would say. And so one day I was just like, you want to go jam sometime? Let's just play some music. It's very unconventional, right? It's like, oh, I should be more professional about this. But instead, do you want to come to my studio in a storage unit and play some music? And that's when, like, things started kicking off. It's like I realized it's like, oh, like, let me figure out how to connect with people that's me and not necessarily about the product.
So this was in like a customer context.
Todd was a customer. Todd was a customer.
I gotcha.
Which is funny because Andrew Ferranti.
Yeah.
He was a customer.
Okay.
And now he's one of my best friends. And it's just like one of those things where, same thing with Andrew, we connected on photography. And at the time I started videography and things like that.
Yeah.
And I always see this thing with people where I'm like, man, I want to work with that person.
Yeah.
Like, I want to build something with that person.
Yep.
And that could be really fun. And so that was my first actualization in like sales and how to build community and building like respect and rapport. And I started leaning more and more into that. And then I just realized, what was expected of me at that job was just not me. Like, it was all bottom line. And that's great. Like, as an entrepreneur, business owner, I get it now,
Especially from a sales team.
From a sales perspective, right? Like, but at that point, I was still finding myself. It's like, why am I doing this? Like, this wasn't really something. It excited me at first because it was a challenge, but the expectations just kind of made me feel a little bit inauthentic. And so that's when I took a role with WeWork. And again, it was through a connection I had. Him and I hadn't talked in years, but I used to book his band here in Austin, and that was like, oh, hey, do you remember me? Like, he was one of the interviewers, and so we hit it off, and he ensured that I got the role, and it's that whole who you know type of thing, right? And I started working at WeWork, and prior to that, again, it was different. Like, we've seen kind of this change in the workforce. Startups weren't as prevalent when I was younger, right? Like, to me, they've always existed, but not in the framework of this, like, people invest, you have this community and this idea, and like everybody's excited, and so like WeWork was such a different type of company. I'd never seen that before.
Yeah, that was when startups had sex appeal.
It was sex appeal.
Yeah.
That's the perfect way to put it.
Yeah.
It was like you're looking at a company not for its valuation, but how much people want it. Like, they want to be a part of this mission, right? Mission was like the big word. And I remember I started working there. First day I come in, they were like, hey, come make some beard oil, and like there's kombucha on tap and beer on tap, and you guys can do all, like, just have fun. And I'm in the back of my head, it's like, okay, where's the rug pull? Like, someone's trying to fire me here, right? And no, it never came. And to me, I wanted to bring so much value, and the community aspect was a little bit foreign to me. So like, I kind of eased into it. I never drank the Kool-Aid. It was kind of an interesting place to be. But one thing I did value was the fact that there were people there who like genuinely want to see you succeed and empower you. Like, if you're an AV IT guy, like, you walk on water at a company like that because like they know they need you, and like, it's stuff that they can't do. And maybe it was the nuance of it because they usually hire people from backgrounds that don't really fit with the mantra, the people from food industry or like just random.
IT and AV are always an outlier.
Yeah.
Somebody that does that job is always a little bit on an island.
It is. And it's this other thing where this better than anybody, because we've had these conversations where it's like the persona is always a little bit hard to connect with, right?
Yeah.
Like it's somebody that's so inaccessible. It's a little bit, it's a lot of cynicism.
They're an asshole.
They're assholes. Yeah. Let's just call it what it is, right? Like, and I also figured, like, I realized, like, I don't fit that mold either. I was like, man, I enjoy people taking to me, and, like, for lack of better words, maybe it's worthiness, but, like, I like people to like me. So it's just like, I don't want to be an asshole and be like, hey, I know more than you. Move out of the way. Let me fix this. And that's how most IT guys are. Maybe it's just autism, with IT. Like, you have to have that to be an IT guy.
It's certainly a lack of personal skill.
Right.
Yeah.
And I just realized, like, WeWork fit my... like it allowed me to lean more into who I was, and I appreciated that. Then I sold the studio. I was like, hey, I'm kind of over this whole music thing. It's not to say it was a detriment to my life. I loved it so much, but I fell out of love with it because it's just like I was looking for more personal growth. And I think in the back of my head, I realized it's like, man, my identity is so tied to being a musician, and it's not allowing me to move forward. If anything, it was causing a lot of volatility in my relationships, because it's like, especially in the marriage, I was like, if you don't support me doing this, then, what do you support, right? And I was just like, so like I finally was like, man, I got to get out of debt. I'm tired of doing this. I sold the studio. It helped tremendously, and perfect timing, because like a month and a half later was when they first started having the talks of like COVID.
That was right before COVID happened.
It was right before COVID. Sold the studio, kind of got out of that lease and all that stuff. And then of course, like we knew that the layoffs were going to come, like WeWork, like it's all over the, writings on the wall. It's like, look, this is a co-working space. It's communal.
Yeah.
People can't be here.
It's very heavily private equity backed.
Very heavily.
That money's going to dry up when you can't occupy those spaces.
Yeah, man. And I forgot the bank. But, Adam Newman was working with, the deal fell through, so the investment never came in. The valuation was overly inflated. Like there were so many things from an internal standpoint that we saw that were like, this is going to blow up.
Yeah. WeWork is a famous case study for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And so we all kind of prepared. The first round came and we were all safe. The next round came, and I think it was like April or May or something like that. And of course, like they're like, hey, if you were invited to this call, it means you were laid off. At the time, I was just like, dude, I'm gonna sleep in, so I didn't get on the call. And then my buddy called me, and he was like, hey, were you invited? I was like, he's like, oh, they fired all, let us all go. So it was cool. They gave us the 4-month severance, and it gave me a good like runway to be like, okay, what do I want to do next?
That was April of 20, you said?
Between April and May. It might have been early May.
Yeah, so you got the world locking down because of a global pandemic, and then...
everything's locked down, no money coming in. And it was okay. Like I said, 4 months is a long time to figure out what you want to do. And, I think if anybody didn't see it that way, it's like, I know people have been unemployed for a long time, and I think it's really just for me, I was confident enough to know that I had built a good amount of skill set, but the unknown was still there. And so I did kind of put feelers out at first and realized it's like, man, people aren't really wanting, no one was hiring. There was a hiring freeze for everybody, but it was also like IT and AV was also this thing where you had to have a specialty in systems automation, because that's what people were going towards. They're like, well, we can't have people in the building. We need a way to automate all this stuff. So you need programmers, you need coders. This was before AI was taking over everything. Those weren't skills I had. I was very tactile, and so I did a little contract work, and that devalued me in such a way where I was like, wow, this is going to be weird to try and get back into the workforce. I kind of was like, okay, I'm going to chill for a little bit. I'm going to reset. Let me figure this out. And that's when I told my ex, I was like, hey, I got to do something. I got to do something on my own. I'm tired of getting laid off. I'm tired of, this process. I thought I had found a home. I want to do something for myself. I've got the skills, right? And so, yeah, that was pretty much it. I had decided, and then I had, Phil, right? So Phil was, I wouldn't say a client, but he reached out to me, and he was on hard times. And he said, hey, I'm closing down my gym. Can you come help me take TVs down, projectors? I want to sell off the assets. And
Where was he? Where was his gym?
He had franchised one of the Anytimes, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, he was over off of like Palmer and Mopac. And because I had worked on his house through the company and outside of the company I was working for, the home automation company. So that's how I knew him. And I did all that work for him. And I just, it's a quick 1-day thing. And he's like, how much do I owe you? I was like, dude, don't worry about it, man. Like, I'm on severance. I'm not even worried about it. Just, pay it forward, take care of yourself. And he asked me, he's like, well, what are you doing right now? I was like, I'm just, starting my thing, hanging TVs, whatever, AV stuff, And he had introduced me to a friend of his, and that was when it was just like, okay, she needed help just hanging a TV. So I guess you could say that was my first official client. It was nothing really, but then yeah, the client right after that was the big one, and so yeah, like I said, it was kind of the perfect culmination of like all the skills I had kind of built over a decade, maybe more, and it was just like I said earlier, it's more about the follow through. I think I have this like chip on my shoulder about proving people wrong. It's always been there. You get bullied, and you grow up with like a lower sense of worth and value, and so it's like you kind of compensate as you get older. And so that's always driven me to be like, okay, well, here's a new challenge in my life. What can I do to overcome that? And sometimes I feel like I dominate things, and it's not sustainable for me to be at that like. And I'm not saying I'm the best at anything. I'm saying that I get to a point where I feel like I've accomplished what I wanted to accomplish in that. And I don't want to set my identity to anything anymore. It's like I just want to move forward and challenge myself again and see what that looks like.
I'm familiar with that.
Yeah.
Where you get to like 80, 90% proficiency and you realize like, I don't want to keep doing this forever.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not even perfectionism, right? It's just, it's seeing what your gumption is and like seeing what you have and like, and it's not always driven by someone saying you can't do it. It's more or less you get that like little itch, that curiosity.
Yeah. I would say that you and I are alike in that I had a guy tell me one time, his name was Paul Carrozza. He was the founder of a company in Austin called Runtex that's no longer around. I
know Runtex. Yeah, I remember that.
So Paul and I met at an event where he was speaking, and I went up to him afterwards. It was right about the time that I was thinking about starting a business. And I told him, man, I've got real apprehension to start a business because I'm not really into anything. Like I'm into a lot of things, but like at a surface level.
Right.
And he said, Tanner, there's two distinct types of entrepreneurs. He said, there's inch wide, mile deep, which is somebody that has real deep interest in one narrow subject matter, and they'll commit their lives to that one thing. And then there's inch deep, mile wide, where you have varying interests, but you're not going to get to 100% proficiency in any of them because you'll lose stamina. Yeah. You just don't want to stick with it for long. You want to go and learn other things. It's like as long as you own the fact that you're the latter and not the former, and you can get over your kind of insecurity about not being totally nerdy about one topic, like you'll totally be fine. Yeah. I think you and I are probably wired alike in that respect.
Yeah, I would say that's a lot of entrepreneurs too, especially serial entrepreneurs. You know, and it's interesting because I think there's perception around it and maybe stigma around it that you're not, necessarily devoted to anything or you're not like disciplined. But it's not that. It's like the discipline to even take that first step is huge, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to have the boldness and the courage to say, all right, I'm charting into the unknown once again.
Yeah.
And, you're going to fail so many times, but at the same time, it's like failure doesn't even seem like it's an aspect of being interested in multiple things and like pursuing it. Failure just seems like this thing that doesn't really happen.
Yeah.
Or it doesn't synthesize the same way that most people see it as like, oh, I didn't do it right the first time, or I gave up, or blah, blah, blah. It's just, you do it and then you feel accomplished because you can say, okay, well, I did it. I feel good about it. I have this like thing to show for it, and now I can move on. And
sales is a remarkable teacher for that.
Yeah.
Because you have all these little interactions, and when you lose a deal, you get an opportunity to look back on it in hindsight and go, okay, why did I lose that deal? Was there anything in my control I could have changed? You might get further down the road and that customer comes back, and now you have the full story to be able to tell and the understanding of why the failure had to happen so you could get to this point. Well, the serial entrepreneur thing is something I'm very familiar with because I have a lot of things that I want to be doing just with my professional time. If I'm separating personal and professional time, family and professional, there's things I want to do with my personal time that are not going to change in terms of the importance of them.
Right.
My wife, my kids, my home, like I'm pretty committed there. With my professional time, like I'm 12 years into building this business, and the time requirements are not what they were 10 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, I've got more time to be able to do stuff like this that I don't necessarily have a professional ambition for. I'm not trying to make a business out of podcasting.
Right.
But it's something I enjoy doing as an art project, as just a thing to build for building's sake. It's like building a studio and a storage unit.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be a business.
I know we've talked about this, but, you know, even for you, it's probably cathartic to be able to go through that process of introspection while you're interviewing, because it's like, just like doing sales, you know, what you were saying with the sale itself, it's like, I don't chase the deal anymore. I never do. You know, like I realize like what people don't talk about in terms of sales is like their opportunity cost enough. Because to me, the more time I hone in on something that I really, really want out of scarcity, like I might feel that, you know, like there are 10 other things that are right in front of me that I just can't see because I'm just so focused on like, why did this person say no? And the irony of that is like, they didn't say no, they're just saying not right now.
Right.
And yeah, it's so weird how we focus so much on like the failure, and especially in sales, because for me, once I relinquished that control and I was like, I'm going to just surrender to this, because it's like I can focus on the things that are a blessing to me right now and not have to like feel like I failed. It keeps me so motivated, just kind of just keep moving forward. It's like every single day I hit a hard reset and I'm not thinking about that thing anymore. It's just like I wake up, all right, what's on my agenda for today? Did I get some emails? Okay, who do I have to take care of? I don't even set like very hardline meetings for my life anymore, because I'm like, okay, like the more fluid I can be in my life and ready for it, the better prepared I am. And that's just the way I operate.
Yeah.
You know? But so many people put so much store in like, okay, how much time am I allocating towards every little, you know, return I'm making? And then that feels like a failure, because it's like, if you don't hit that benchmark every single time, like you're kind of diluting your own self-worth every single time you don't see it. And I'm just like, I don't know, it's just not a way to live, you know?
It also doesn't leave the slack in your line for the little happenstance encounter of like, hey, you want to record a podcast this afternoon? Yeah, I don't have much on the schedule. Let's go sit down and do it.
It's beautiful, you know?
Yeah.
And,
that's some of my best interactions with people. Some of my best customer interactions were random Friday afternoon happenstance that like you weren't planning on sitting down and doing this with this person. And it just, you get a phone call and you realize like, oh, okay. The seed that I planted 2 years ago just sprouted, and I wasn't even intending for it to happen.
And I got some boots.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's, I have probably dozens at this point of customer interactions where the first time around it was a no.
Yeah.
And it's why sales is such a beautiful teacher for life opportunities, because those things, when they happen to you early, you can't learn those lessons otherwise. Like I could have heard from mentors, hey, you're going to lose deals and then they're going to come back around later. And it wouldn't have helped prepare you for the pain of losing the deal.
Yeah.
And then the beauty of the thing coming back around and what it does for that relationship going forward.
Right.
Like dozens of opportunities happen like that, where you get a phone call from somebody, and the moment I look at my phone and I see this person's calling, I know exactly why they're calling. I know exactly what's about to happen. And then you have this future excitement and relationship that you can build around that sort of shared experience of the failure.
Yeah. Well, I'll take it a little bit further than that. And you and I have had these conversations. You know, we had those 2 years that were just horrid in terms of, you know, sales, and I'm not a cold lead type of guy.
Yeah.
I can't do it. I can't do the cold calling and, you know, blah blah blah. You know, I have great relationships, and again, you know, like that path to God now has been more about the surrender and be like, okay, none of this is up to me anyways. Let me lean into who I am and what I want, but also just say, you know, this is what I need to manifest. And so that 2 years was painful, and it was a learning lesson for me, because it's like, man, I was, the first 2.5, 3 years was just such as like growth that most businesses never experienced the type of growth we did as a business. Like it was insanity.
Yeah, you were the dog that caught the first car you chased after. And you weren't even chasing the car. It's like the car found you.
I got hit by the car.
You got hit by the car.
And then, you know, they're like, hey, you want to drive? I'm like, sure. You know, like I don't have thumbs, but let's do it, right?
You're right.
And then So yeah, when it all just started to kind of like fall, just nosedive, it was the power of humility, because it's like, man, what did I do wrong? And I'm sitting there thinking, it's like, what could I be doing better? What am I not doing? And I'm just realizing that, um, I didn't set myself up for the conventional notion of a business. I was very blessed to have, what happened fall in my lap. But me as a personality is like, okay, I have the integrity to just always follow through. Like, that's just how I am. That doesn't mean I'm a good salesperson per se. It just means that, as soon as somebody sees my work, they, it qualifies me for what they want. And so now we've gotten to a place where things have turned around. It's amazing. Like, we have so much abundance that I remember the other day I got a call from someone, and sometimes I have to go through my whole text threads because I don't always save everybody's number, and I had to remember who this person was because it was a no last year, right? And like, I had to talk to him, and be like, hey, can you remind me what this project was about? Because yeah, it's when business is great, it's one of those things where like you're making a new connection almost every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're in an industry that's so nuanced as ours, there's a little bit of overlap, actually a lot of overlap to what everybody does. So it's hard to delineate what somebody might need that's a little bit different than the other. In my head, it's like sometimes it's all the same thing. But it's interesting because I know you just brought up, what that call's about when it comes back around, but maybe it's somebody you really worked towards, closing. But for me, sometimes we get a lot of fly-by-night clients who you can tell when they're not serious, or you can tell when, their budget maybe isn't in the realm of what you can offer. And I have a soft spot for that a lot of times because I want to work with people who genuinely just want to work with us and see the value in what we bring. But sometimes they don't value it, and they're just coming and thinking they can play hardball with us. And the power of no has been the biggest weapon we've had as a company, is being like, look, man, I don't want to waste your time. Please don't waste mine. Like, let's be respectful of that. And if this is going to be a macho bravado thing, like, I don't want it.
Yeah.
And
is there a way that you could explain that to a younger version of yourself, or is that just a lesson you have to learn yourself?
I think it's one of those things where I think I've carried that regardless of the sales aspect, because I've seen in my entire life, whether I was young and getting bullied, or like with my own, situation personally with my dad and stuff. So it's like, I've always been prepared. It's like a defense mechanism for me. When someone tries to strong arm me or something,
prepared to walk.
Yeah, I've gotten to a place, it's probably in my early mid-20s, where I'm just like, dude, I don't have time for this. And even at the expense of maybe getting bullied again, or getting into like someone getting into a physical altercation with me, like, I'm just like, dude, can we not do this? And I've taken that into the company, where it's like, yeah, man, you've got $100 million, you're worth 500, whatever it is. It's like, can we just not? Can we get past this? Like, it's that weird thing of like, our inner children are screaming for attention, and we want to be so important, but like, that's all it is.
Yeah,
it's just fake money. It's like it's an exchange, and it's one of those things where like, can we make this less unpleasant by just being human and saying, look, like, you need a studio, you need this or that. You came to me for a reason, and I value your time, and we can make that happen. And rather than us doing this like back and forth of like, oh, who can get the better leverage on each other, it's just like, we don't have to do that. Like,
yeah, you have enough reps to, at a certain point, to remember the times where you closed a door intentionally. This is not a project I want. And all of a sudden, 2 opportunities pop up because you had the bandwidth to take them on by not taking on that customer that was a slog for you. Yeah, it makes it easier and easier to walk away as you get further down the road. You ever had to pull the plug on an existing project, one that's going on, and you just realize, okay, we're not aligned here. We need to get rid of this customer?
Yeah, it was probably our second project. It was in Croatia.
In Croatia. Okay. What of that can you tell?
Oh yeah, I can tell whatever. Yeah, I won't talk about the client, but I know that like we were excited. We were, to me, optics was everything at that point. Like, I wanted people to feel like we were legitimate. We had just done Rogan, so it was like, okay, I don't know but we didn't have a portfolio. And that was the thing that always worked against us, is like, okay, what projects did you do up to Rogan? It's like, none. Like, this is it. This, and so and I think I've told this before, but this was a learning lesson for me. And I think it was all a part of it. It was a gift to show me like a lot of things at once with this project. But the beginning of this project, I had called everybody I knew who I wanted involved in my company. And I said, hey, we're going to do a Zoom call with our next client, right? And he called us up. He was excited. I just got that tag from Rogan. And so he's like, I'm reaching out to you because, I saw what you did for him. I want to do something crazier, right? It's like, all right. We get on this call and everybody's on there. I don't have any notes. I don't have any, I'm not delegating anything. I want everybody here so he feels like confident in us as a company. And he starts talking and it's just the wildest thing, man. He wanted a studio under an aquarium. Right?
Okay.
He wanted it built like the first one we did for Joe, like a cylindrical room, but he wanted the wall to wall to be water and glass. And my ego got in the way, like right away. My little stupid AV engineer hat turned on, and I was just like, well, that's stupid.
It's not great for acoustic.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I told him, like right off the jump. I was like, dude, this is going to be an acoustical nightmare. I don't know how we're going to get electrical and cabling and yada, yada. His face just went just morose. He was just the energy I could feel just dropped, right? I think that's the one thing that I'll pride myself on is like reading the room and being like, okay, like I said something wrong. And
you feel the vibe shift.
Vibe shifts so much.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, okay, well, let me talk with my team. And I knew it. I was like, oh man, we lost it. We lost it. And I sat down in bed that night. It just bothered me all night. It's like I know what I did wrong. Like, can I salvage this? What do I do? So I texted him and I said, hey, look, can we get on another call? Give me, whenever you're convenient, next day, 2 days, whatever. And so we get on the call. And this time it's just me and like maybe one or two other people. And I said, I told him, like, look, man, I apologize. Like, I should have been more excited about this project for you because this is a really cool concept. We would love to be a part of it. So let me pull my engineering brain out of this because we can figure this out, and let's just get excited about this and make this happen for you. We'll contact the right people that we need to contact, and right away, just like send me the invoice. Let me know, who you need to, what you guys need to get started. And yeah, it was one of those moments of, you already made the sale, dude. I had already made the sale. Like I didn't have to show off who I was and my knowledge and feel like, and the ego got in the way. And, but that was one of those projects where we got into it. Man, we did so many designs for this guy.
Mm-hmm.
And by the end of it, we just designed an empty concrete room. And after that, we just kind of lost touch, and like he kept kind of like telling us to do that. We just overexerted ourselves with design time for this guy, and finally we just slowly kind of started backing out of the project, just being like, 1, it's in Croatia. 2, this guy can't make up his mind. 3, like we really hyped this thing up, and like maybe that was not in our best interest. We should have done more. So that project just kind of fizzled out. And to be honest, like we've had multiple projects where we go through the whole design phase and either they run into financial hardship or they just kill it.
Yeah.
They lose interest.
It's not a small project.
No.
And unless you have a way to pay for it that the podcast operation can facilitate, it's a big justification.
It is. And sometimes they have the means, but they might have to shift and do something else for the company, and no longer can they be the talent in front of the camera and justify their time anymore. So they just don't see the value, and they just walk away from, the design fees and stuff. And
yeah. When is it worth somebody's time to build their own sort of from the ground up?
If I were to advise somebody for that.
Yeah, if you're talking to a podcaster.
Yeah.
And they say, hey, I'm thinking about building my own studio out at the house and, have you come in and do something like what you did there at Soundshed.
It's usually the best time to do is when you need to like reinvigorate your team, your clients, like when you want to personalize what you're doing, and maybe it's not so personal just yet. It's not just about building a brand, it's accessibility. So let's say you have an offer that's really hard and you're spending a lot of time with individuals every single time. So you want to cast a wider net, and you're like, look, the best way to do that is to get in front of a professional camera. And instead of doing one-on-one calls, it's not about the podcast, right? Like the podcast can be a facet of what you're doing for people to understand you as a business, but it's also a way to be a conduit to you when there's multiple people who need your wisdom or advice or whatever your offer is, right? So like, let's say you're not even a fitness coach. Let's just say you're a life coach or something like that. Historically, you'd have to like go rent a space and promote it, and people would have to come to a convention or like some sort of talk or summit. As you get older, that takes a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
You're building your staff. Like you need a higher rate of return for, the investment. And so you can justify it then because you're like, look, now I can get in front of thousands of people without them ever having to leave their home.
Mm-hmm.
Or I can interview a success story and they can come into my studio and it's almost like a testimonial for me. Or I can position myself as an authority in a space. Maybe I'm not Tony Robbins yet, but I want to be adjacent to that. And the more eyes I can get on me, the more it builds the like optics that I've built something like he has. And so, the podcast can serve as what we're doing as a conversation to help empower people to get in front of more people. And maybe it's a curiosity people have to watch you guys, or it can be, you can weaponize it as a way to, get in front of people and show them, hey, like I'm also human and I'm doing this with a purpose or a mission or an intention. And now you have a lower barrier to entry to me because I can post this on YouTube and people can see it. So it's like to justify it is basically, you're not going to see a return on content necessarily unless you format it that way and you're doing courses and there's a paywall and, whatever that is. But you're going to see a return in keeping your clients or like them being able to say, look, like I've been working with this person. Now you can actually go work with them for free just by seeing their content. And then it's a higher conversion for you without ever really having to do anything. You're just putting yourself out there,
I'll add a thing to your list here because this has turned a corner for me in my own personal project now. It's not a totally inexpensive endeavor, just from a time perspective and from a financial resource perspective, and the people on your team that I get involved and on my team that I get involved. Like it's not nothing.
Yeah.
But for me, when you're the CEO of a business, it's a little bit of an island unto itself, right? Like I've got partners in the business. I've got guys that I operate the company with day to day. That relationship is really strong, but having a relationship with other leaders is important to me because there is a difference in that dynamic. When I'm talking to you as the CEO of your business and I'm the CEO of mine, there's shared experience that we have that nobody on your team or mine can necessarily relate to.
Right.
And so at the end of last year, I took a sabbatical last year and coming back from that sabbatical realized, there's a bit of loneliness in that job that I hadn't really fully acknowledged, Yeah. And one of my ways to solve that was to try to join a CEO peer group. So I spent the last quarter of last year visiting peer groups, meeting with people in membership for these Founders Club, EO, Vistage, all these different peer groups you can join. And I just realized, man, I don't think those things are for me.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm the guy to go and do that. But I really value the relationships that I get from talking to other CEOs. And like you, occasionally I'll run across somebody and I just instantly have some, I don't know what it is, man. I catch the vibes with somebody and it's a guy I want to get to know a little bit better. A great context for that is sitting down with them over coffee in a podcast studio and just getting to know them in that context.
It's like a date.
I'm justifying it as CEO peer group building.
Okay.
I don't need a better reason than that because I am enjoying doing it. And even though it's costly, it's not like break the bank costly.
Right.
It's something I can still afford to do. And if I'm going to spend money on a CEO peer group, which by the way, those are not cheap.
Oh yeah. I wouldn't pay for that.
No, I'd rather do this.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's so much personal value to sitting down with somebody and having a conversation because it's weird. Like you see a reflection, especially other CEOs, like you see that shared experience. But sometimes as you say something out loud to another CEO or somebody else who maybe has the shared experience, whether it's a hardship or, a success or something, sometimes it's not that it becomes diluted, but it feels a lot more relatable. Like if you've gone through something and you're just like, man, and then someone's like, yeah, dude, I know how that feels. And you're like, shit, well, that blew up my whole world 6
Yeah.
months ago, and you went through it. So it's like, that's pretty cool. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like I'm not, suffering by myself or in silence or whatever it is. And even the little wins too, because you realize it's like sometimes those little wins that you experience to you are a little bit diluted. But when you talk to somebody about it, it's like, dude, like you came back from that. You know what I mean? Like you spent all that time, and like I know how it feels to like have that last little bit of my bank account, and then all of a sudden you land that big deal.
Yeah.
It's like nobody ever feels that, you know what I mean? Like that gut in your feeling, and until you say, yeah, like I've been there. And you can even quantify it with dollars and cents and be like, dude, I know exactly where you were.
There's also not a context where you can share those victories where it doesn't feel like gloating.
Exactly. Yeah.
Unless you're talking to somebody who's also been through it and knows you're not gloating. It's just a way to have that shared experience.
Well, and it's funny you bring that up. I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and I reconnected with a buddy of mine over the phone, and he's out in Florida, and we grew up together. We were third grade best friends. We were best friends all the way through, say, middle school, and then I moved here in high school. Try to stay connected, but we were like the loser squad, right? Like when I say loser squad, it was like me, him, and one other guy. We grew up in Houston, and like nobody wanted to touch us. And we were just, okay, it's going to be the three of us, ride or die. Okay. And it was interesting because life has a weird way of showing you things after you become an adult. Like you look back, like this all makes sense now. He was definitely way more disadvantaged than me, not in the sense that his parents were, he wasn't poor or anything like that. It's just his parents were egregiously, what's the word, abusive towards him verbally and things like that. So I know I grew up in a privileged way, not that we had money, but I had a mom who really cared. And so, money was never anything that, we had experienced. My dad owned a business, and he failed at that, and it had massive consequences on us. And so in reconnecting with this person, we haven't seen each other physically in like 20 plus years, something like that. And we were talking, and this is the second time I've had this conversation with somebody. He was talking about what he was doing. He's working like 3 jobs. He's out in Florida. He's got 3 kids, divorced. And he's just, it's one of those things where bad things happen to people and they feel like they're the victim. I'm not saying he doesn't feel a certain way. It's not that he's not valid for feeling that way, but you get stuck in this situation of, what's next, and like now I'm just living to pay my bills. I can't wait till my kids are old enough so now I can have, like that was part of the conversations. Like, I can't wait till my kids are 18 so I could stop paying child support. And, like to him, there were so many things that he had in his life that were just not worth, him being gracious towards. He never really asked anything about me, but what he did say was like, oh, it seems like you're so successful now. And, you have money and this, that, and the other thing. And like you said, you don't want to talk about those things because to me, it's like, that's not how we were connected to begin with. Like we both experienced life at the same time in the same manner. We just took different paths. But I told him, I was like, look, man, I'm glad to hear, your kids are loved and that you see them all the time. That's amazing. And I told him, I was like, dude, don't worry about what I'm doing. I told him, I was like, I've got my own set of challenges. My challenges, my problems, they just come with more zeros behind it. That's all it is, and I had another friend who acknowledged that too. He's like, it must be so easy. It's like, dude, the fall is way harder, man. Like the fear of failure. I wish sometimes all I had to worry about was paying rent and not taking care of other people and putting them first and saying, hey, like if I fail X, Y, this person's going to feel the impact of that. And it's not lost on me. It's not like I go to bed and I'm like, well, if I fail right now, I have this much money in the bank and I can just hold it to myself and like, live off. Like, I don't think that way.
Yeah.
It's like, if I fail, I can't pay this person and then they can't pay their bills. They can't do what they need to do. And it's this weird thing of being a CEO. You have these, you constantly think about these things. And if you're not thinking about it, it's only because, you're focused on how to become more successful so you can give back. And, but then, you know, those intrusive thoughts come in when you're just like, man, I know I didn't give 110% today.
Yeah.
I know I couldn't show up. Like I maybe gave 60% today.
Yeah. The fear of failure is way more persistent.
Yeah.
Now than it was 10 years ago.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And,
you realize the impact radius, the blast radius of failure is way bigger.
It is. And going back to your point, you feel like you can't always celebrate in front of certain people.
Yeah.
Because it does feel like gloating. It does feel like, well, you know, like I earned this. It's not that you earned it. It's just that you've positioned yourself in a way that you have to be able to like thrive so everybody around you can thrive.
Yeah.
And even when you're not thriving, you know, like you have to kind of set that aside and just be like, all right, you know, I don't need anybody knowing, you know, what I'm going through in order for them to feel secure and safe, you know?
Yeah.
So it's a weird dynamic. It's a weird duality you have to kind of live in.
Yeah. We know that if you're riding high highs, you're setting yourself up for lows being much, much lower.
Mm-hmm.
I used to have a mentor that talked about being a tractor. Like you're not going to be in a tractor and go super, super fast,
Right.
but you can set a gear and you can just trudge forward at that gear and you don't let yourself get too bogged down and you don't get too high. You just kind of keep yourself right in the middle. But it does make it hard for celebrating wins.
Yeah.
And there is regret in that. Like we've had some definite points where there was a victory to have celebrated. 10 years in business is one of them. Like the 10-year anniversary of Live Oak, I went to lunch with a bunch of guys on my leadership team. And I sat there like, I got to get out of here, guys. I don't want to sit here and celebrate with a cake. Like, I'm not interested in it. And I regret it. I wish I would have paused a little bit to at least have one victory under my belt that I'm celebrating with the team.
Yeah,
but man, it's hard. There's a lot of tension to that.
But your team empowers you to do that too. Like I've got a certain individual on my team. You met him, Christopher.
Mm-hmm.
So Christopher, I've known. Did I tell you how I know him?
No.
He used to be my pawnbroker.
Really?
Yeah. So I spent a lot of time in my 20s in pawn shops.
Because of the musician thing?
I had a bad habit of racking up credit cards and buying equipment, and you know, like just I'll get depressed and I'll spend on something stupid I don't need, and but you know, I was always pawning things to get the next guitar or whatever it is, and Christopher was always at one of the shops, and same thing. I always had this feeling. I was like, man, like me and him are going to do something together. I was always inviting him to like my band shows, and so he was on the first project with me. With Rogan. And after that project, he was the one, like, man, I was so in my head. It was 2.5 weeks of just like go. And he sat me down and he stopped me. He's like, Matt, I need you to stop. I was like, well, what do you want, man? And he's just like, dude, I need you to stop and just like look, like we did it. Like we finished it. I know you're worried about all the little details that Joe might see, blah, blah, blah. He's like, but he's not here right now. And like the project's 99.9% done. So like I need you to stop and celebrate that. And like, and that was never lost on me. I was like, man, it is crazy because like your team will see it sometimes.
Yeah.
And they'll give you that grace to be able to step back and be like, yeah, we get it. You're the leader. You got to do all this stuff. But like also, we're excited.
Yeah.
Because we're part of this. We're part of like this thing that you started. Now we get to build it together. And, so.
Yeah.
So that, it's a weird thing, man. It's weird to step outside of yourself and be like, oh, I am human. I did accomplish something. And that feels good. Like I can allow myself to feel good about it. Because we're always just thinking about that next thing we have to do. And like, what are people expecting of us? Like, what are they thinking of us? Like, oh, that client, is he mad at me right now? Or like, are they, like, we can't control any of that. We do our best. We show up. As long as we keep showing up, I think it's going to figure itself out.
Yeah, it has a tendency to. My guy Mike does that for me a lot. He's our chief revenue officer. He's worked a dozen jobs at Live Oak since we started it. Since he was there, I think he's been here 8 years. But he's the best I know at being able to pause me in midstream existential angst and go like, we're in the good old days, buddy.
Yeah.
Just pause and look at what we built thus far. Yeah. So yeah, he's great at that. I want to pivot real quick. We got probably 10 minutes left.
Sure.
When I met you, one of our bits of shared experience was, I would say, like previous church or religion trauma. And both kind of struggled with this notion of God and a higher power and what all that means and whether there's legitimacy to it or whatnot. What has changed with you in, say, the 6 years I've known you, 5 years I've known you? Has anything changed?
Yeah, man, quite a bit,
Can you talk about it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Where were you when we met?
When we met, man, like I was just at a place where, I was holding onto the wheel very tightly.
Hmm.
There was a lot of chaos in my life, upbringing, and I just decided that, I'm not going to lose control, and it's funny because the more I try to keep control, the more I would like punish myself when things didn't go right. I'd say, man, like I can be very honest with myself when I know like I've dropped the ball and the change, obviously you have a kid, and when I had my daughter, you've got your boys, but like having my daughter was a moment of clarity for me because here's the thing is like I never didn't, I was never atheist. I was just angry. Very different things. And I could mask it all I wanted and say, oh man, there was no God or blah, blah, blah. But, I struggled with the notion of him actually giving grace or actually like caring. So, I think that's my hangups with my own experience with my dad, but that's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah.
But no, it was just, when my daughter came, I was at a very low point with the business, with myself, the blow up with my actions in my marriage. And I just realized like for her, I need to connect to something, and yeah, I don't know. It's just, you sit there and you see that versus the success, the money, whatever it is, like it all just falls apart, Sorry, man, just give me a second.
We have some shared experience in this.
Yeah, of course, and like seeing her was where things changed.
Was it instant, or was it seeing her start to grow?
I think it was just like seeing me start to grow through her. Like I felt opened up, and I just wasn't angry, anymore. And so I also, noticed myself, I was like surrounding myself with men like you and friends who encouraged that type of connection, like a lot of my life, I surrounded myself with people who helped me stay feeling safe in that anger. And as you start to elevate and you start to like accept the fact that like this wasn't just because of your efforts, like, it makes a lot more sense. And yeah, I had a lot of process to go through to make up for some of the actions that blew up my life. But a huge turning point for me recently was attacking those things with my dad at the end of last year. And I confronted him, and, not out of anger or malice or hatred, but out of, the courage my daughter like gives me. And it just like relinquished everything. Like it was gone. It's like, and that's when I was like, man, like I'm ready to listen, So yeah, it's been it's been kind of pivotal in my life. And it's not, I don't see it as like consequence. I don't see it as this, not consequence, but coincidence that we are abundant in business. My relationships have gotten stronger, like with her mom, and like, it's, yeah, it's starting to make sense,
Yeah. I think like the case with building a sales profession where you have the benefit of hindsight and you can look back and connect dots and go, oh, that's probably not an accident that happened. I've had many of my mentors are Christian men who have experiences with God that they can clearly articulate. And I envy it because my experiences with God are all things that I can articulate in hindsight.
Right.
Like all things that I can look back at a pathway and go, if I don't go to the mountains in Colorado and take a real heavy dose of mushrooms and have this sort of mental death experience that was really horrific and something I would never encourage somebody to do, except for it nudged me this direction, and then this thing happened, and then this door opened, and then,
Right.
all the things that you can connect in hindsight, and you go, man, the likelihood of that happening accidentally, probably not.
Yeah.
It at least opens you up to this notion of there's probably something in control that's beyond me, and clearly I can't control it.
Right.
So letting those reins go a little bit, being like, all right, well, use me how you're going to use me, is something that the men that I respect the most in my life all have that as a common theme. Powerful men, men that are wise. A lot of them that I've had in here to talk, older people that have just way more life experience on me.
Yeah.
That's a very common thread, is I reach a point where I realize, as talented as I am, as blessed as I am with the skill set I've got, the people I've run into, I am utterly powerless when it really comes down to it. And being willing to let that go and just be used how you're going to be used, that's an important step, especially when you got kids to raise.
Yeah.
Wow. It ups the ante. Yeah. Well, thanks for being open to talk about that, man.
Of course.
I wrote down 10 things here. I think I got to 3 of them. So that means we'll get to do another one day. But thanks for being open to doing this.
Absolutely, man.
Anything else you want to talk about before we hang it up?
No, man. It's been a good experience. I don't really get on camera too often, so I appreciate the...
let alone in your own space.
My own space, whatever.
Yeah, you built this room how long ago, and you hadn't recorded in here before?
I don't know. I think me and Paul finished it last March, maybe.
Yeah.
Something like that. March. Yeah. Oh, it's no, this has been really good. There are, a lot of times when I get on these interviews, obviously it's always Rogan centric.
Yeah.
And I think knowing you, I felt a lot more comfortable. I think that's why it was easy for me to say yes, because, we have a long history of having very deep introspective conversations.
Yep.
And, I
intense conversations.
And you know what I've always appreciated is like you help me push me to that place where like I won't allow myself to go sometimes. And hopefully you can kind of see that part of the journey I've been going on, for some time. So I appreciate it.
There's something about that shared experience and going through tough shit with other people that you can just look in the eyes and go, yeah, I've been there. I know what that's like.
Yeah, definitely.
We're linked in that way. So I appreciate the friendship. I appreciate the studio you've built and the team you've put together. Like I guess I'm 43 or 44 recordings in now, plus the 10 that we did for Live Oak. Every single one of those instances that I've been in here, I've left with more energy than I came into the room with. So that's at least partially due to your creativity and putting together a space where that kind of thing can happen. So
awesome, man.
Thanks for doing that.
Yeah.
Thanks for being willing to do this, man.
Thanks, brother.
We'll do it again.
Yep.